Ruin is finally here and it blew me away. Across the board, people are saying it's a breath of fresh air for modern Five Nights at Freddy's. Even people who disliked or even hated Security Breach are giving props to Steel Wolf for what they've done. And why wouldn't they? Everything from the graphics to the gameplay with the whole mask mechanic to even the fact that it's actually scary this time, with a few decent jumps throughout. But that's not what we're here to discuss today, because I could gush about this game for hours. Today, we're on a mission. The one thing this DLC definitely has in spades is lore, and new things are being found every day. But for now, we have some serious information to go over. So slices, put on your aprons, and let's bake ourselves a theory. For the purposes of this video, I think it makes the most sense to split it into two sections. First, I'll go over the basic plot and lore as directly presented in the game with zero speculation. Maybe a light implication every now and then, but just straight plot line. In the second half, I'll do some theorizing. However, for the point of the video, I'll do some very easy to agree with light speculation. Things that are pretty clear, but technically involve some sort of implication. I'll leave the really crazy theories to start next week. As an example, if this video was about FNAF 4, the first half would just be going over the minigames, the plot within, and maybe suggest that we play as the crying child, whereas the second half would go over that we could be playing as Michael. And I wouldn't touch on the theory that maybe the whole thing is real and tests done by William Afton. That's more speculative. Got it? Good. Then let's dive right in. The basic story explanation is our player character Cassie gets a message from her friend Gregory to come to the Pizzaplex, but he doesn't say why. When we get there, we can't find him, but we do find the Pizzaplex is in a terrible state after what the papers call an earthquake. Going a bit deeper, we find a walkie-talkie in which we hear Gregory tell us that he's trapped in the pit at the bottom of Roxy Raceway. Something grabbed him and now he's stuck. We need to come save him. Going deeper, we encounter Glamrock Chica. She tries to attack us but powers down almost immediately. It's likely that this happened because of the terrible damage and somewhat melting that she's endured so far. We go further in and find a Faz wrench, a tool used by the staff at the Pizzaplex, and Cassie remarks it looks just like her dad's. She soon encounters Monty, falls into the sewage, and ends up at Monty Gator Golf. She then encounters the damaged staff bot that gives her the virtual augmented neural network integration mask, or the Vanny mask. We will get into it. It shows us an AR version of the real world that tells us that some objects are and aren't real. It also displays the security nodes. These are virtual manifestations placed around the Pizzaplex that power and activate security measures, things like locked doors and the like. They are part of the MXES or MXES system, something that was put in place by someone to conceal and trap the endoskeleton in the basement. We will get there. Once we put on the Vanny mask, we meet Helpy, a digital assistant. He seems like a perfectly friendly digital assistant, but then he puts an ocular implant that allows him to be in our vision even when we're not wearing the mask. He also occasionally says some whack shit, but when he does, his eyes go yellow and some veins appear on his head, so something else is going on there. Finally, in this section, we meet the rabbit entity trying to stop us. We're all pretty sure what it is, but that's technically speculation, so for now I'll just say this digital rabbit is trying to protect the security nodes, and in doing so, releases distress calls to the animatronics to try and stop us. We follow this basic setup through pretty much the rest of the game, using the Vanny mask to navigate the Pizzaplex and turn off the security nodes, following the instructions of Gregory and Helpy. All the while, MXES and this rabbit entity is trying to stop us. However, we do learn some things in the meantime. Not only did Monty replace Bonnie, but Bonnie's full animatronic is still at the Pizzaplex, just destroyed. If you deactivate every wet floor bot and do something else, I don't know, I still can't get it to work myself, there's a hidden room in the back of Bonnie Bowl that shows Bonnie's full, damaged animatronic, surrounded by 4 more wet floor bots. There's a broken bowling ball that seems to imply that he was damaged here as well, but any more is going to be speculation. This does, however, nearly deconfirm that Glamrock Bonnie was used for parts to create Burn Trap, mainly because all the parts for Glamrock Bonnie are still here. We also learn that Roxy did in fact replace Foxy, but much earlier than Monty replaced Bonnie. She also fully replaced him in the Pizzaplex as a whole. Bonnie Bowl still exists, but where Roxy Raceway is, Foxy's log flume once was. For unknown reasons, it and all of the Foxy merchandise around it has been tucked and hidden away. Finally, at At Roxy Raceway and Roxy Salon, we learn a lot more about our player character, Cassie. From the Roxy dialogue at the end of the game and the cardboard cutouts we see here, we learn that she had a birthday at the Pizzaplex on the 11th, but nobody came. Roxy was there, and eventually, possibly, Gregory showed up too. Other than that, no one showed up. Speaking of Roxy, there's some interesting things about her animatronic specifically. When we put the Vanny mask on, Chica and Monty just appear in the weird X-ray vision that most things do. Freddy completely disappears. I forgot Freddy. We'll get into Freddy. But Roxy looks different. We see a digital recreation of what Roxy looked like before she was damaged. Furthermore, Roxy is the only one that recognizes us as a child, remembers us being there, and turns friendly by the end on her own volition seemingly. And finally, when we deactivate her at the instruction of Gregory and Helpy, this digital recreation goes away. Now, Freddy, totally forgot about him. We encounter him in Fazbear, and while he is missing his head, implying the Princess Quest ending, he seems to have a weird stomach mouth. Any more is going to be speculation, so I'll leave the rest of the discussion when we get there. Going down into the hole under Roxy Raceway, we see that something has tunneled out of the old pizzeria, because there's a tunnel leading straight from there through the giant Freddy statue. Presumably this is the Blob, since we see the Blob leave early in the game, but we don't know for sure. Going through, we find a huge cave filled with water and glowing mushrooms, and going even further, we see what looks like the pizzeria with some weird wooden sections. Inside, Candy Cadet tells us a story, which I'll summarize to: a mother and son live in a cabin in the woods, there's a monster in the woods, the mother locks the monster in the basement, the mother sings a lullaby to the son every night, eventually the monster learns the lullaby and tricks the son to open the door with it. The story ends there. We go deeper in and we find the rooms that make up the FNAF 6 labyrinth. Even further in, and we find the MXES central hub. We put on the mask and turn it off. In doing so, the rabbit entity pops out of it to grab us but gets sucked back in. We then power a forklift to bust down the cement-covered doorway, and we meet it, the endoskeleton that's been locked in the basement. We learn that this whole time, who we thought was Gregory was this endoskeleton mimicking his voice. We will get there, believe me. Then, seemingly, Gregory's voice calls us, the real Gregory. He warns us that this is all a trap, we're not meant to be here at all, and tells us that his friend has instructions on how to get out, and then leads us to an elevator. If you go in the elevator, Gregory explains a bit more of the situation, there's a bit of feedback on the walkie-talkie, then he says that he understands that we did this for him, and he's sorry, but he has to make sure that we weren't followed. And the elevator drops, seemingly killing Cassie, but then at the end of credits, Roxy says, "Cassie?" So she's probably alive. There's also two more endings here. If you disobey Gregory's orders and eventually go left, you find a Fredbear cutout holding 2 ice cream cones. If you put on the Vanny mask, you see a recreation of the Save Vanny Good Princess Quest ending. However, Freddy's head has been swapped out for Helpy, and they're all holding ice cream cones instead of what they were holding originally. We hear Gregory said that he found a safe place to hide, and it ends. However, there's one more secret ending, this one much harder to get. There's 4 hidden cameras throughout the game, each of which open a door in this chase sequence. If we've activated all 4, the endoskeleton is no longer just an endoskeleton. We get there and it's created this stitched version of several different mascot suits, all created into one. It seems to be a lion base with elephant and bird parts stitched together. If we go down the doors we've opened during the chase sequence, we then go into a room very reminiscent of the scooper room from Sister Location. We turn it on, and what looks like a scooper, and the game files call a scooper, dismantles the endoskeleton in front of us. And let me tell you, I was not expecting that. He's kind of in the Family Guy dead pose. What is that? And if you want to see me actually play through Security Breach Ruin for the first time on stream live, there's a full 6.5 hour VOD on this channel. But if that's too long and daunting, I actually have something to announce. From what I can see, 2 people solved the puzzle that I've been laying out for a few months now. So shout out to Pool Noodles and Sandwichly. But I'm officially launching a second channel, Rye Toost. It will primarily be highly edited versions of the streams that we do on this channel, done by my
wonderful, talented, funny, and wholesome
editor, Queen Coda. Expect content like this.
Huh?
Who were those little friends? Oh, shit. but it will also be home to videos I want to make that don't really fit on a FNAF theory channel. Things like Pokemon Nuzlocke, Mario game rankings, cooking content, who knows. The channel officially launches next week, but the channel is currently made, so you can go find it here to subscribe and turn the notifications on, and I'll see you in a week from now. One of the videos on launch will be part 1 of my Ruined Security Breach playthrough, and I personally cannot wait to start this new venture with you guys. Thank you so much for allowing me to live my dreams like this. But anyway, that was the entire plot of Ruin. It's a very weird plot with a lot of interesting points to go on, but now it's time to start theorizing. So bake with me for a second as we'll start chronologically. First, I think it's pretty safe to assume that the canon ending for Security Breach is officially the Princess Quest Save Vanny ending. After all, Gregory, Vanessa, and Freddy's head are nowhere to be found in this DLC. Second, Freddy is damaged and headless in the same place he would be at the end of that ending. Third, the Princess Quest machine in the Vanny hideout is toppled on its side with an AR yellow sword stuck straight through it, implying that it's been beaten. Fourth and finally, I think part of what the Fredbear cutout ending is telling us is doubling down that the Princess Quest ending is canon. Next up, Cassie's dad. Now, I'm working on a much more controversial theory in the background, expect that one in like a week or two, but for now, let's just go over the direct implications in the game. When Cassie picks up the Faz wrench, she notes that it looks just like her dad's, and when we look at the description, it says that they're used by Faz technicians, so we can assume that her dad was a technician at the Pizzaplex. I say was because several times in this game when he's referenced in the past tense. Bonnie was his favorite. He used to collect things like this. I think this is all implying that our father worked at the Pizzaplex as a technician, but has since died. I do think he's very closely linked to the Pizzaplex though, at least the franchise as a whole, as we learn that his favorite animatronic was Bonnie, he used to collect old vintage lunchboxes, and he knew what happened to Glamrock Bonnie. So he's been around in this franchise for quite some time. Any deeper speculation than that wouldn't suit the vibe of this video. So we'll leave it that Cassie's dad was a technician at the Pizzaplex, but is now dead. Now, I'm going to save the Vanny mask for when we talk about Helpy, Gregory, and the endoskeleton, so for now, let's just talk about MXES. I think it's fairly safe to assume that the rabbit entity chasing us throughout the game is just the digital manifestation of the MXES system. I also think that MXES is the good guy here. If the mask is what allows us to deactivate security protocols, MXES is just acting upon its initial programming. Like, of course he would want to stop us. That's the whole reason this Toon Summoned Skull was ever created. He did nothing wrong, just following programming. The next thing to mention is this weird connection between the wet floor bots and Glamrock Bonnie. I mentioned that you have to turn off every wet floor bot to gain access to him, but he's also surrounded by 4 wet floor bots while still active. If you deactivate those 4 as well, he shuts off. Not only that, but when you go in his green room tunnel, first thing you see is an outline of the wet floor bots. And when you approach active wet floor bots with the Vanny mask, you hear these ghostly wails. Something is here, like there is some kind of connection between the wet floor bots and Glamrock Bonnie. I just have no clue what it is yet. Freddy also presents some questions. With his missing head and the location he's in, plus the heavy damage, it implies that this is the same Freddy at the end of the Princess Quest ending. However, there are some issues with this. 1, the damage on his front looks intentional as it's formed into a mouth. And 2, there's this weird prototype stamp on his foot. I bring up the damage because everything else seems accidental and like they were just destroyed throughout the game, whereas Freddy seems intentionally made that way. But that could just be a cool design feature. The prototype thing has me hesitate a little more. In Security Breach, Freddy does not have this prototype tag on the bottom of his foot. This is new. This could imply that this is a separate Freddy, but I think it makes the most sense that this is Steelwool either slightly retconning the design or just it's been revealed through more damage that he is a prototype, and it's their way of explaining a little bit more on why the glitch trap virus didn't perfectly infect Glamrock Freddy. Alright, I've put it off long enough. Let's talk Gregory, Helpy, and the Vanny mask. I think it is most likely that the endoskeleton in the basement of the Pizzaplex is the Mimic, the main antagonist from the epilogues of the Tales from the Pizzaplex books. Now, I'm not going to go into the debate on whether or not those books are within continuity. There is still speculation on both sides, and it's very heated on both sides. That's not what this video is meant to do, so I'm just going to go over what the Mimic means for this game, and I'll make references to the book. This endoskeleton, the Mimic, has the ability to recreate actions it sees and voices it hears, and it's that ability that it uses to trick Cassie into freeing it from the Pizzaplex. The Gregory we hear throughout the majority, if not all of the game, is actually the Mimic pretending to be Gregory on a walkie-talkie. But if that's the case, what about Helpy? He seems to be allied with this fake Gregory, and although he looks normal, occasionally he seems to be taken over by something more sinister. Is this just the Mimic again? I hesitate on that, mainly because there's a few times in the games where Gregory and Helpy seem to bicker. One of the examples is the first time that MXES is shut off in the Monty catwalks. Helpy mentions that he activated a jammer that counteracted him, but then Gregory chimes in saying that he did the real work. If this was all the Mimic, this seems a little too intelligent for the trick it's trying to pull here, to be pretending to have a fake fight to seem more real. It seems like these are two separate entities, but if they are, I have no clue what Helpy is. Maybe it's Glitchtrap and he's still hanging around, it's still too early to tell. And finally, the Vanny mask, or the Virtual Augmented Neural Network Integration mask. I've seen some debate on what this mask is, but I personally believe it's fairly obvious. The acronym tells us exactly what it does. This is not a security mask, and it never was used by any of the staff here. This is the Mimic or Glitchtrap's way of getting inside of Cassie's mind. The moment Helpy does that like occipital integration thing, we lose. We see him in the real world, it's over. Think about what the acronym is saying here. Virtual Augmented Neural Network Integration. A neural network is a computer program based around the human mind. It's essentially a type of AI, and it's being integrated into us. So what does virtual augmented mean? Well, it could be referring to the AR features of the mask, but I think these adjectives are modifying the nouns of that phrase. I think the neural network being implemented into Cassie's brain has been virtually augmented by Glitchtrap. This mask is how Glitchtrap, or the Mimic, is going to take over Cassie's mind, which leads me to the endings. The most straightforward ending, I feel, is the elevator, but I don't fully agree with what the game is presenting here. Several folks on Twitter already noticed that there's a shift in the dialogue while in the elevator. Gregory seems to break for a moment and there's a mic feedback, and suddenly the dialogue repeats that it's Gregory. A lot of people, and myself included, think that this is where the Mimic retakes over communication with Cassie. And that's right when Gregory starts to say, "I know you didn't mean it, this is not your fault, but I can't let you be followed," and the elevator falls. Essentially, I don't think Gregory said that, nor do I think Gregory dropped the elevator. I think that's the Mimic taking back control. Also, Cassie surviving that elevator fall is very suspect, but I'm hesitant to think of any kind of robot kid shenanigans for now. To me, the second most straightforward ending is the Fredbear cutout one. We see it, we put on the Vanny mask, and we see a recreation of Princess Quest. I think this ending is Cassie losing, because I think this is a recreation of the Princess Quest ending. Literally, this is the augmented neural network taking effect, and Cassie's mind is trapped in this idyllic fantasy that she made it out and everything is okay. Meanwhile, on the outside, Cassie's turned into the next Vanny. They already built the cage around the true mind of Cassie. There's a lot more evidence for this, but that gets into very speculative waters, so I'll save it for like 2 weeks from now. Finally, the strangest ending of all, what the files call the scooper ending, where the Mimic puts on a stitched together costume, chases us into like a sister location room, and gets scooped. I'ma be so real, I have no fucking clue what this means. I will say, however, and I'm just gonna touch on this ending is the main reason why I'm still not convinced that the Tales from the Pizzaplex books are in continuity. Hear me out. A huge important factor of the Mimic is the white tiger. In the books, the Mimic first copies its creator's son, David. David's favorite animal being a white tiger. He has a plushie of it, his bed looks like it, and several times in the books, when it has the choice to present as something, it is a white tiger. In the storyteller, the head of a white tiger animatronic has the Mimic inside it. In Tiger Rock, it presents itself as the Tiger Rock animatronic in this VR game. The Mimic likes presenting as a white tiger, which makes me feel like this moment would have been a shoo-in for Steelwool to say, hey, the books are in continuity, look, it's an endoskeleton wearing a white tiger. I would have shut the hell up. I would have fully accepted that, but they didn't. They specifically chose a lion with other animals stitched on the sides. To me, in the current moment, this feels very specific because tigers and lions are pretty close, but they're not the same thing. To me, this feels like Steel Wool trying to tell us in very specific terms, this mimic we're presenting you is very similar to the Tales from the Pizzaplex mimic, but it's not the same one. We've stitched on some extra things and changed its backstory. That's where I'm at right now. Just gonna be honest, I know people are gonna hate that. That's where I'm at. And hey, guess what? You're allowed to hate that and you're allowed to disagree with me. That's how this shit works. But I will be going deeper in on that next week for some extra reasons why. And that's it. Every single bit of lore directly presented within the game, plus some light speculation sprinkled on top. And I was pretty close to a good amount of it actually. Help Wanted 2 is finally here, and I streamed it for like a full day and got as many secrets as I could find. Now let's do a summary, shall we? I figured the best thing to do for a video this early is to fully cover the entire plot and lore of the game, and then go into some light speculation. If you've seen my Ruin video, you'll know what I mean by that when we get to it. But slices, put on your aprons, and let's review some Peak, and I mean Peak. The game's only been out for like a day or two, but it's easily already my favorite FNAF game of all time. Oh, and obviously, spoiler warning ahead. In the opening cutscene, we're in a Fazbear employee orientation that has new audio, but uses the same exact slides from FNAF 6. And that makes a lot of sense, since once we get into the game, the hub for this game is the FNAF 6 pizzeria. Granted, there's been things added to it, but that definitely is the same location. We're playing as, well, that's not necessarily clear, and we'll get into it in the speculation portion. We do, however, know that whoever we're playing as is the last human employee at the Pizzaplex. At least that's what the blog post from PlayStation and the head chef bot says.
Welcome to your new career in food service. It is a task so simple a human can do it.
But the twist is, halfway through the game, we get the Faz Wrench, that tool from Ruin that lets you do these wire puzzles. And if you do the wire puzzle that's in the corner of the hub room, you get access to the back room, where there's a Princess Quest 4 machine and an inhibitor that in Ruin would not let you take off your mask. Once you turn it off, once you turn that off, you're able to realize you've been wearing the VANNI mask, or Vanny mask. This tool from Ruin allowed you to access the AR world and see things that weren't there. So now that we're not wearing it, we get to see what the hub world actually looks like. And it's still the FNAF 6 pizzeria, but it's a lot closer to what we see in Security Breach, even with that hole. It's totaled, but notably, it's not falling apart as it would have been in Ruin. Another addition to this hub world now is Candy Cadet in the corner. If you've collected all the coins in the game, you get 2 stories. I have not collected all the coins in the game, and there's no guide yet. But luckily, Mamakato on YouTube uploaded all the voice lines for Candy Cadet, so you can listen to them there, link in the description. Of the 2 stories, I'm wagering to bet that the first story is more filler than anything else. It tells of a family who missed out on the best opportunity in their lives, a $50 meal deal with a huge pizza, sides, and a toy. And then when they didn't buy it, they all died. Now, you could argue this is some kind of metaphor, but granted, keep in mind, this story takes like 3 or 4 coins to get. And when you first boot up the game, there are 3 or 4 coins scattered throughout the hub area. I think Steel Wool wanted to teach the player that we still would be collecting coins, but didn't want to reward us for doing basic looking around. Essentially, if you're going around the hub world, you see these very out in the open coins, which pretty much give you the full first story and then a snippet of the second story. I think that's Steel Wool's way of being like, hey, if you collect coins, you're going to get a really cool story, but you gotta work for the lore relevant one. That's my guess anyway. Mainly because the second story feels very lore relevant. It tells of a girl who followed a mysterious voice into the woods and was tricked by a witch. She gets away, but she's forever scarred. Later, she returns with the boy to then challenge that witch and get revenge. But she goes to sleep and says, I'll get the witch in the morning. Then the story ends with the oven door shutting, the witch finally getting her meal. This can be interpreted in a lot of ways. And whatever way you interpret it will definitely be speculation, but I'm afraid I'm going to forget to mention it later on in the video, so allow me to indulge in some light speculation going over this story. The main 2 ways I can see the story being explained is with Vanessa or Cassie. Hey, it's Editor Riley. It's like 4:30 a.m. I'm trying to get this video out. Anyway, upon editing this video, realized that I totally misinterpreted that story and that it still could be applied to either Vanessa or Cassie or even Michael Afton. Casey just shook the camera. Sorry about that. Are you literally? Bro. I missed a major part of the Candy Cadet story. Again, listen to the whole story if you want to hear it in the description. But the boy that she goes back in the woods with is a trap. She meets the boy at the front of the woods, and he's like, oh, I'll help you find the witch. And he's the one that says to rest. Like, they go through the woods together, he leads her through the woods, and he's like, hey, here's a house so you can rest and defeat the witch in the morning. And she's like, you're right, I should rest. And then the witch's oven door shuts. So yes, she's led astray by a voice as a girl, but when she goes back, she's led astray specifically by a boy, which feels like it could go still either to Vanessa and Cassie. Honestly, it feels like it's both, because Cassie makes sense for the second half of that story where she's led astray by a boy going into the woods and then gets trapped, which is literally just ruin, right? Like, Cassie follows Gregory into the Pizzaplex and then gets trapped in the basement. But if we're going that way, the story doesn't track for Cassie going back for revenge, right? Like, she was going solely to go for Gregory. So the first half of the story doesn't make much sense for her. And with Vanessa, the first half of the story makes a lot of sense. We're like, led astray by a voice and gets out but is scarred. And that's her being led astray by Glitch Trap, and she gets out of Help Wanted, but part of her is now Vanny. So it feels like the first half is Vanessa and the second half is Cassie. I don't know. Those are just my first thoughts. But I was editing the video and I realized that since I misinterpreted the story so heavily, I just could not salvage that part of the video. It was just so wrong. Anyway, excuse the Snuggie. Enjoy the rest of the video. Again, it's still up to interpretation what this story means, and some people have even argued that it's actually about Michael Afton, so take it with a grain of salt, and it's worth looking into. A couple other things I want to mention about this hub room before moving on. For some reason, Glamrock Chica's hand is on the stage. I was looking at it, and at first I was like, oh, it's Glamrock Bonnie because it's kind of purple, but Bonnie doesn't have those colored gloves, and his fingers are blue, very clearly blue. You look at this, and it's like a whitish purple with green gloves. The closest hand I could match it to is Glamrock Chica, which then begs the question, why was she down here at all? Glamrock Chica so far has had no real lore significance, she's just been around. Even more so, this is her right hand, and in her ruined form, she has her right hand. She's missing her left arm. But to be fair, she has her endoskeleton right hand, so this could just be the casing. Regardless, what's going on with Chica that her hand is in here? And finally, in the corner of this room is a goddamn Nightmare Own plush. What the hell is the deal with it? This isn't the only one. There's another one hidden in that Princess Quest ending behind a column. I say that ending. We didn't get into it yet. I'll get into it when we're at that ending, but there is a Princess Quest ending with the Nightmare Own plush hidden behind a column. So like, what do they mean? Anyway, onto the lore that we get from the actual minigames. In Food Prep, we don't get that much lore, but it's worth noting that we only ever see Shattered Chica. We do not get all the way to Ruined Chica. Furthermore, we do get this very clean shot of the atrium, which to me tells us that at least part of this game is taking place during Security Breach. After all, it's not confirmed that the Security Breach Pizzaplex is completely burned down by the end of the game, because some endings that doesn't happen. However, it's definitely way worse than this by the time of Ruin, so we're at least taking place during or after Security Breach. In Backstage, we learn a few things. One, whoever we're playing as is the reason Roxy looks different from Security Breach to Ruin. This was not a design retcon. This was intentional. At some point, we go to Roxy and she begs us to fix her, to make her look beautiful. But after 3 attempts, she gives up. She doesn't want us to try anymore, nothing's working. So she just demands that we give her the mask. And lo and behold, that's that weird endoskeleton face that she has in Ruin. Really quick aside, I think we need to take a step back as a community and stop throwing around the word retcon so readily. For the past couple years, anytime something hasn't made sense with something previous, we've all just kind of assumed it's a retcon, but this is Five Nights at Freddy's. We've never had all the answers. I know I and many others saw Roxy in Ruin and assumed that her design was retconned so that it could be used with a fast wrench, but in actuality, we just didn't have all the answers yet. In fact, it was someone under the influence of Glitch Trap who put that mask on her in the first place. How many retcons that we currently believe exist are just that, questions that we don't have the answers to yet. So I'm going to personally try to make an effort to stop assuming things are retcons when they don't make sense, and I hope you'll do the same. Anyway, we also finally know who's in that hidden daycare area, and we have its official name. In Arts and Crafts Loft, we're in that hidden area, so this is the daycare loft. But we see that Sun hides in here, possibly to prevent Moon from coming out. After all, he does not want us in here. He doesn't want us in here at all. Several times he's like, get out. So this probably wasn't Gregory's hideout, or if it was, he was roommates with Sun Moon, which could make for a really cute fanfiction to have like GGY and Sun Moon hanging out. Also, according to the names of the models in the stage menu, we finally have direct confirmation that the daycare attendants' names are Sun and Moon. Not Sunny Drop and Moon Drop, not daycare attendant. Sun and Moon. It is stated directly in the menu, which is good timing because I'm working on a cookbook lore video, and in the cookbook, they're referred to as Sunny Drop and Moon Drop. So thank God the game cleared that up before we got there. And now maybe the cookbook isn't as lore accurate as I thought. Anyway, in FNAF Only, we learn of a few things. First, while Pigpatch and Lefty are shown during gameplay while we wear the mask, Scrap Baby isn't. We see Scrap Baby without wearing the mask at all. I really think that, plus the layout of this room and the fact that we're already in the FNAF 6 pizzeria, is really showing us that when we're practicing medical stuff on Helpy, we are in the FNAF 6 office that Michael is in during the gameplay of FNAF 6. After all, we've got the vents on either side, and granted this curtain is new, but I don't know, maybe we're facing backwards or something. But also, if this minigame is really happening, and so far we have no reason to believe it isn't, Scrap Baby is still around at least up until like mid-security breach, maybe after. And if Scrap Baby is still around, did Henry's fire not do anything? I don't know, it's really strange. That's gonna be a lot of theory stuff. Freddy also mentions that we're Fast Technician, but granted he can't see us. He literally says, and you're a Fast Technician, are you not? So he's guessing. However, we do get confirmation what this room in the Endomaze was used for. Specifically, it's teaching endoskeletons. Also giving us confirmation that the Glamrock endoskeletons are taught, not programmed. In other words, they're probably very similar, if not the same exact thing that the book mentions when they say that Fazbear created a whole line of mimic animatronics. They were trying to mass produce mimic endoskeletons that can just learn, not necessarily be programmed. In Fazcade, there's a few tidbits, including one of the biggest pieces of lore drops in the games. Now, take it with a grain of salt, because Carney could just be saying off pre-programmed lines. It's impossible to tell, but if it's true, this is huge. At some point several times in Phaser Blast, Carney, this new animatronic, which we'll get into, says,
"Now, you look like you got kids.
What does that mean?
For the little one."
Am I Bonnie's dad or Cassie's dad?
And if we look like we have kids, presumably we'd be a parent. And there's like 3 parents in this franchise, and 2 of them are definitely dead. We'll get into that later. Bonkabon also has something important. In the hard mode version, not only do we hear Glitchtrap's voice when those creepy eyes show up in the holes, but in the bonus round, we literally see a puppet of Glitchtrap on a hand that looks like Glitchtrap come out. And when you hit it, that's when the whole tilt and code portion begins. Ticket Booth doesn't have much in the terms of lore, but it does raise some interesting questions. Namely, what the hell is this carousel? Realistically, it should have been in the daycare. Sun and Moon are the characters that are in it, but we never see a carousel in the daycare. Not only that, but there's the pumpkin, the lantern, and the hay bales, things that are usually at Fall Fest, the thing that we see in the Help Wanted 1 DLC and referenced a lot in Help Wanted 2. So if this carousel is from Fall Fest, not the daycare, then does that mean Sun and Moon are way older than we thought they were? And notably, one of the voice lines that Moon has is, "What makes you so special?" Which really makes you wonder who you're playing as. To me, initially, this read as a line of jealousy almost. At the time, I still thought we were playing as Vanessa, and we'll get into why I don't think so anymore. But when I thought that, this line read to me as jealousy. Essentially, Moon wanted to be Glitchtrap's servant, but Vanessa was chosen. What makes her so special? That's how it read at first to me, but honestly, the line could go a lot of ways. Captain Foxy's log ride doesn't give us a lot of lore, but it does show us this ride that was never fully open to the public. And finally, sister location. There is a lot here. First of all, the fact that we're going to the sister location bunker and sister location animatronics are here in an otherwise pretty real feeling game is insane, because we shouldn't be able to. At least not with roaming animatronics. After all, at the end of sister location, all of the animatronics shed their shell and become Ennard. But not only do we see Ennard, we see all the other animatronics, even Circus Baby. This shot of Circus Baby is the first time in the entire franchise that it's possible we're seeing actual Circus Baby do stuff. The only other time we've ever seen Circus Baby move in this entire franchise is this minigame and this Help Wanted minigame, which we know is a fake video game. Weirdness aside, as far as direct lore goes, there is a lot here. It's notable that one of the Office Night minigames, Office Puppet Master, has the subtitle, "This custom night is made just for you," implying that we're the Puppet Master. But the really packed one is Office Job interview. This is where Circus Baby would like to play a game with you. You defend yourself against Scrap Babies 3 different times, and then Circus Baby herself shows up, offers you ice cream, which is the way that she kidnaps children, or the way she's programmed to anyway, but she doesn't. You just take the ice cream and eat it, and she says good job, essentially. And I want to point out a few things here. One, again, this is the exact way that she killed Elizabeth Afton, so that's gotta be notable. But second, this hand. Now, this could just be a gloved robotic hand meant to give out ice cream, and it probably is. At first, I thought this was Vanny's hand. After all, it's very fluid and it's wearing that white glove, but upon closer looking, the fingers don't match and the patch on the arm doesn't match either. In fact, the coloration matches Biddy Bab's pretty well, which makes sense. They're essentially an extension of Circus Baby. I don't think this is a Biddy Bab. Again, the fingers don't match. These fingers are very distinct. It's most likely this is just a gloved robotic hand, but I did want to put that out there. Also, notably, she has important voice lines as well. She also says, "What makes you so special?" And she mentioned that she likes being here. It makes her feel safe. Finally, this shows up in pretty much most minigames that have these TV screens. I know it shows up in the Endo Daycare as well, but occasionally, and you see it a lot in Sister Location, whenever these monitors flicker, sometimes it'll say they are watching in the flickering. Now onto the endings. On a normal playthrough, you unlock these Fazbots throughout the game. Occasionally, when you beat enough minigames, you unlock essentially a animatronic Fazbear Transformer doll. It's really cool, and you get this like 80s styled ad for all of them, which teases all 4, 2 of their secret friends, and that they can all combine into one bot. And I don't have to tell you why all of the animatronics combining into one thing is a red flag and something we definitely need to look into.
In case you're new here, because a new game came out and you actually don't know, several times in this franchise, like 5 souls combine into one, or 5 things combine into one. This is 6 technically, but it's still important to recognize, like, Molten Freddy is literally all the Funtime animatronics merged into one. It's a big theme in this franchise.
Eventually, you learn these 2 mysterious friends are Fredbear and the Puppet. When you unlock all of them, you also unlock the combined bot, and upon collecting it, you get the neutral ending. You're transported to the ruined pizzeria again, but this time there's a charging station on the stage, and Glitchtrap's hand comes out, going to open it. We then cut to several of the Nightmare staff bots pretty much surrounding and closing in on us, and then we cut to static, implying death. But we see the starting up screen, we see the beginning of Security Breach, this time for a staff bot. And through our eyes, we see Maskbot from Ruin, giving the VA and an eye mask, or Vanny mask, to Cassie, beginning that whole game. It's a really cool sequence, and also, we finally get a new updated model for Cassie, one that's meant to be seen by the player, and she looks really cute, and it's way better than the model that wasn't necessarily meant to be shown in Ruin, but was present. That is a crazy ending, but it's not the craziest. There are 2 endings in this game, and the other ending involves that Princess Quest machine I mentioned, and a whole other side to this game that we didn't get into yet. Occasionally, when you beat a minigame, Mystic Hippo, whether or not you're playing on PSVR 2 or otherwise, will give you a hint. She'll mention there's some graffiti somewhere in the lobby, and it'll give you a hint into a minigame you just played. Now, Mystic Hippo is a queen and we love her, but these hints are incredibly cryptic at times, so I'm going to go through all of them for you just now in case that if you're playing on your own, this can serve as a guide on how to get these secrets. This graffiti I think is the most straightforward, but someone in chat still had to solve it for me because I couldn't figure it out. It's tilt Bonkabon backwards. Now, when you're playing Bonkabon in the hard mode and you get that tilt sequence, you have to punch in a code with wires. This hint is telling you, punch in that code backwards. And if you do, once it closes, Glitchtrap's hand comes out of one of the holes, presenting a voodoo doll, or something that looks, I keep saying voodoo doll. It kind of looks like a stereotypical voodoo doll. I don't know what it is. It's like a patchwork doll with a Bonnie mask. And once you collect it, notably, this is the only one that does this, as far as I'm aware, you get an achievement that says, "Remember Jeremy, collect a memory." That feels super important. This next graffiti is hinting to go back to the Sister Location office level with Ballora. If you do, and I did this on accident the first time, the drawer that's locked in Every Other Night is unlocked, allowing you to access the keypad from Custom Night of Sister Location. If you punch in that same code, 1983, it then gives you the puppet masked plushie, which has huge implications and could be implying that Charlie dies in 1983, which is interesting and something to think about, but regardless, that's cool. The next graffiti hints at shooting all of the rockets in Phaser Blast, specifically the one in the first, Western, and FNAF 1 levels. if you do all that and beat the FNAF 2 level, the things that you've knocked over by shooting the rockets light everything on fire and it burns to the ground, which unlocks the FNAF 3 Phaser Blast minigame. The FNAF 3 Phaser Blast minigame basically has you do a 1v1 with Springtrap or a cardboard cutout of him. And if you defeat him, he does a weird jump scare for you, and then you unlock the Freddy plushie. The next graffiti is a hint for food prep, where in the 3rd level, you have to throw out every Chica-based food product. That's the Chica Lemon Bar, the Chica Pink Lemonade, the Chica Smoothie, and something I forgot about, Chica Chowder, over on the menu. If you throw out all 4 of those, you get Chica's plushie. This hint of Helpy being hit several times, at first I thought was, okay, we'll go into this was before like I knew that it linked up to the last minigame you played, so I was trying to figure out like where we interact with Helpy. I went to the med bay, and there's a big star right on his chest that looks like an impact frame. So I tried to solve it myself.
Torture Helpy. I don't know if this is doing it, guys.
Turns out this is just a hint for the Foxy log flume to shoot all 3 Helpies. But specifically, in each of those sequences, there is a very hard to see star that you also need to shoot. Here, here, and here. And then at the end, one last one on the cake. If you shoot all 4 of those, the ride continues to this strange greenish lake with a box. And in that box is the Foxy plushie. No, not this box, don't worry. And finally, in what I think is the most cryptic hint, this graffiti, which I had no idea what it meant. Someone just had to straight up tell me in chat. But this means go to Fizzy Faz Night 3 where there is a can of Soda-Roni and make the Tombstone, or is it the Graveyard? I forget exactly. It's a drink where you add every flavor except for salt because it's not available yet, and then pour the Soda-Roni in to top it off. Then put it in the chute, turn off power, and trash it. I never would have figured that out. And like it makes sense in retrospect, but it didn't make sense at the time. If you do all of that, you get the Golden Freddy plushie, which is interesting that the Tombstone hint gives you the Golden Freddy plushie. Once you collect all of these plushies, Mystic Hippo gives you this glitched coin, which then allows you to play Princess Quest. Now, this is Princess Quest 4. It's different from the others, but it's still the same idea. We're the princess, we get a sword from the old guy, and now we actually are able to teleport as well. We go through a couple levels inside the castle, and then we find ourselves playing the game. Once we hit ourselves as the princess, we're transported into Princess Quest. And this is, I think, the coolest moment in all of modern FNAF. Maybe all of FNAF. It felt honestly cooler than Henry's speech to me. I don't know if that's the hype talking, but it was so cool to be in Princess Quest. This minigame we've played for like 5 years now. We're in Princess Quest and we're the princess. You go through, you go deeper, and then you go outside to a tombstone puzzle, the same that you see previously in Princess Quest. But this time, the tombstones are not only numbered, but labeled. Those plushies we've collected throughout the game are sitting at each of the tombstones, the same tombstones every time. If you light all 6 tombstones, the door opens. But if you light them in the correct numbered order of the tombstones, you unlock a secret basement area where you can get a Bonnie mask. On collection, it says, "This feels oddly familiar," or something similar. Again, I played this game like twice and I'm trying to make this video very, the exact wording might be different. Then when you go through the door, you approach that same old man. He gives you the Vanny mask and says, "This feels like a fair trade," and he also gives you the Glitch Trap plushie. And then, on the surface, the most confusing sequence I've ever seen in a FNAF game happens. Within Princess Quest, the sister location elevator appears. We go inside and it's new. There's now a ruin wire puzzle, so either they're trying to establish this has always been a thing, but that would be a retcon, so again, I'm trying to not assume retcons, or this is a new sister location elevator. Regardless, it starts moving and falls apart, and you're actually inside a giant crane machine with Vanny playing. Moon comes up, calls you a naughty boy, takes the Glitch Trap plushie and tosses him aside. Then Vanny shows Glitch Trap to you, seemingly crushes him in her hands, and walks away, leaving us to rot in there. Yeah, it's weird, but it's also really cool. So that's all the lore we directly get, except for the Mystic Hippo minigame. I really don't know what that is yet, and I haven't found good, clean footage of it yet, so I don't know. I don't have a PSVR 2. I'm not made of money. So what can we speculate about this game? I want to start with really concrete theories that will be useful for opening up discussion. For the stuff that's more out there, expect that in the coming weeks. To start off, when does this game take place in the timeline? Well, when it comes to timeline placement, I think it's pretty clear clear. And the main reason for it is that second Roxy makeover minigame I talked about. In it, we the player are giving a makeover for Shattered Roxy. This is the design at the end of Security Breach. However, after she gets frustrated of nothing working, she just demands that we give her the mask. Said mask being that strange redesign from Ruin. This minigame, I think, makes such a solid case that Help Wanted 2 takes place during and after Security Breach, but before Ruin. In case you aren't convinced from that, consider what else we see in the game. We see several instances of the Security Breach animatronics. I'm talking Glamrock Chica, Glamrock Freddy, Roxanne Wolf. Strangely, no Montgomery Gator at all ever, which is really strange to me. And we get to see shattered forms of Chica, Roxy. We even see a shattered Music Man, which has never been seen before. But as far as I can find, the only things from Ruin we see are the Vanny Mask, the Faz Wrench, the thing that we give Roxy, and the scene at the end of the game. The Vanny Mask and the Faz Wrench existed before Ruin. The thing we give Roxy allows Ruin to make sense, and the scene at the end of the game happens at the end of the game. I think this game realistically has to take place during and after Security Breach and right up until the beginning of Ruin, except for one issue: sister location. I still don't have a good explanation for why these animatronics are moving around. Now, I could explain the location. That kind of makes sense to me. After all, you have reason to argue that the FNAF 6 location and the sister location bunker are pretty close, like proximity-wise. And I'll go way deeper into that later on in coming weeks as I'm doing theories for it. But as far as why the animatronics are moving around post-Ennard, I really don't have a good explanation for it. Besides, I don't know, they got new endoskeletons. But realistically, any deeper into that discussion is going to be way too speculative to be useful for today. So next, who are we playing as? And that's up for a much bigger debate, but I know where I currently stand on it. I think our best bet for who the player is actually Cassie's dad. For those who don't know, in Ruin, Cassie, our player character, constantly refers to her dad, who used to be a Faz technician. It's ambiguous where he's ended up now, but we do know that his favorite animatronic was Bonnie. He knew about what happened to Glamrock Bonnie, and presumably he was looking into it. So if we can assume those things about them, which granted is speculation, then we have someone who we don't know much about, but whose identity was recently teased at. And now we have someone who fits that bill. A player essentially going through the Pizzaplex trying to find what's going on. We know he definitely had a Faz Wrench, and the Vanny Mask is said to be used by Faz technicians, something we know that he was. For some supporting evidence that doesn't prove it but helps build the case, look into how we're referred to throughout the game. Carney, this strange new animatronic that I mentioned earlier, constantly in most of the Fazzer Blast minigames says, "You look like you have kids, try to win a prize for one of them." Which, I mean, we only know like 3 parents in this series, and it's definitely not William or Henry. Glamrock Freddy assumes that we're a Faz technician, but granted he can't see us, and Mystic Hippo, Moon, and Circus Baby all ask us, what makes you so special? Why do we, some random technician, think that we can fix what's going on here? What makes us so special? But I'm going to take it one step further, and this is really dipping into speculation, so take it with a grain of salt. But bake with me for a second. I think the theories were right. I think Cassie's dad is the Bonnie masked bully in the FNAF 4 minigame cutscenes. The one back from the Bite of 83. That's what makes him so special. He also mourns his actions just like Michael, and he might have been keeping up with Fazbear this whole time to see what was going on. That's why this mask in the Princess Quest ending feels so familiar. One thing I forgot to mention in the other half of this recording, this could also explain why we don't see Montgomery Gator. After all, if we are playing as Cassie's dad, who loves Bonnie and knows that probably Monty was the one to do him in, he might just not like Montgomery Gator, and that's why none of the minigames have us interacting with Montgomery Gator. Why would he want to? He killed Bonnie. I do, however, think that the neutral ending where we see Glitch Trap return is the intended fully canon ending. Because honestly, what a good narrative tragic tale. A father just trying to do what's best and maybe even trying to make up for some sins he did in the past. Gets caught up in something way bigger than him. Overwhelmed by odds he couldn't predict, he's forced to watch his own daughter fall down the same rabbit hole that he did. Maybe Cassie's dad being in the system is what will eventually allow Cassie to break free, but until then he's just a helpless spectator. And I do think that this revelation, if true, recontextualizes what Cassie says in Ruin. Whenever Cassie is talking about her items, specifically character merchandise, she always uses like the third person or refers to them as it or he or she. she. They're always objects. With Monty, it's hard to look at. Nightmares, it's from that old headset game. Even Bonnie, Dad wouldn't tell me why they replaced Bonnie. But the only time she addresses something directly is the Bonnie mask. When she collects this mask, the mask that her dad probably still had, after all, it feels familiar, even when he's so deep in Princess Quest, and a mask that he probably has a lot of tragedy for. When she collects it, she looks at it and says, "What happened to you?" She's not asking about the Bonnie event. After all, there's a possibility during Ruin she learned what happened to Bonnie. She's asking why her father went to work one day and never returned. Not even during her birthday. What happened to Cassie's dad? Finally, what the hell is with these plushies and this weird ass ending? Well, it's not rocket science to state that these plushies are most likely a representation of the victims of William Afton, at least the first ones. It makes a lot of sense. It tracks for all of the missing child incident kids and Charlotte. What I think is relevant though is the achievement you get for when collecting the Bonnie plush, Remember Jeremy, with the tag retrieve a memory. Not sure what that's about, but maybe it's relating the fact that the bullies from this scene knew the kids that were killed. Maybe that's why they were bullying the crying child in the first place. I don't know. Like I said, speculation. Another thing worth noting is this final puzzle. We are literally handed numbered tombstones that are labeled with plushies, and it's always this order, and in the correct order is the only time you unlock the Bonnie mask. I think this game is telling us the correct order of these deaths were the missing child incident kids, starting with Chica and ending with Golden Freddy, Susie to Cassidy, and then Charlie, which I grant you doesn't make a lot of sense. Henry says, "A wound first inflicted on me." This game links 1983 with Charlie, but this tombstone puzzle to me feels so concrete. And then the ending itself, I think, is a bit more self-explanatory than people are giving it credit for. A lot of people have been confused because it seems like Vanny is killing Glitchtrap, and that's a valid interpretation, but I don't see it as Vanny killing Glitchtrap. After all, if she's killing Glitchtrap, why would she still be Vanny? Wouldn't Vanessa want to kill Glitchtrap? To me, this is how I see this ending. We, as probably Cassie's dad, have been hunting down what's really going on at the Pizzaplex, and we're in deep. We're so deep into the Vanny AR mask that we're having trouble differentiating what's real. And then we get to the Princess Quest machine where we get so involved, we go inside of the Princess Quest machine, probably just mentally, and when we are as deep in the rabbit hole as it possibly can get, we're also the most exposed. And it's then that Vanny finds us. The achievement for this ending is, quote, consequences, with the subtitles, system threats found, repair complete. Vanny found us in the system, the threat, the thing trying to route out Glitchtrap from the Pizzaplex. She makes us give the plushie of Glitchtrap back, and she shows Glitchtrap what a good job she's done routing out the threat. Then she takes Glitchtrap with her and leaves, leaving us to rot in this prison she's created. And if this is true, I'm starting to think the Princess Quest ending from Security Breach isn't canon. In Ruin, we see the Princess Quest 3 machine toppled over with a sword through it. And for a while, I was like, okay, Princess Quest definitely happened because Princess Quest 3 has been beaten and Vanny's nowhere to be found. But there's a Princess Quest 4 and Vanny is still around. And Cassie's dad was the only one we've known to be in the AR world and hold Princess Quest's sword. So it's possible that after Security Breach, Princess Quest 3 does get beaten, but not by Gregory, by Cassie's dad. And then he goes further in. Finally, I think this game is really nailing home that Glitchtrap is the Mimic 1 program within the AR or VR or virtual world. Essentially the Mimic 1 program that has been trained using Help Wanted, learning all of the misdeeds of Fazbear. And that Vanny's ultimate goal is to bring Glitchtrap into the real world into a suitable body. Although, I do want to still use the term Glitchtrap, only because we have a physical endo in the real world called the Mimic. And calling this the Mimic and calling this the Mimic, I think will just get kind of confusing. So for now, until they are confirmed to be merged in the real world, I'll be referring to this is the Mimic and this is Glitchtrap, even though they're two halves of the same coin, essentially. Hopefully by the next game, Glitchtrap is finally in this endoskeleton, so I can just call it the Mimic. And that's everything I can think to mention that I found has been found before. At least everything that isn't cut content. I don't want to cover that necessarily because I don't think cut content is meaningful, really. It was cut for a reason after all.
It really is the 10th anniversary of Five Nights at Freddy's, because a FNAF game shadow dropped before its announced release date. Into the Pit was supposed to come out yesterday on Thursday, but due to some whoopsies with the Japanese release, it released early, so they decided to just ship out the game worldwide on Wednesday around 5 p.m. EST. And it is so good, and I'm honestly glad it came out on Wednesday, so I was able to make this video for you guys today. Today's video is useful to everyone, whether or not you've played Into the Pit yet, even if you've only heard of the game. The first chunk of this video will be spoiler free, and in fact, it'll give you a good idea as to how the game plays and what the game is about. Kind of a see it before you buy it sort of deal. And don't worry, there will be a massive spoiler warning before we touch anything that could be considered a spoiler, which is the bulk of this video. So for now, just stay tuned. Slices, put on your aprons, and let's break down a recipe. So, what is Into the Pit? As a game, it looks and plays so visually distinctive from the rest of the FNAF franchise. It's further away from FNAF than FNAF World was. Well, Into the Pit is a survival stealth game with a heavy emphasis on puzzle solving, and it's based on one of the short stories from Fazbear Frights of the same name, Into the Pit. The game itself is really damn good, and it brings a lot of well-needed horror into the franchise. As far as replayability goes, the majority of the game is the same on most playthroughs. However, the game is rich with hidden secrets and Easter eggs and additional settings on replays, so you can customize your experience every time, and you're likely to find something new. I mean, just as an example as to how deep these secrets can go, one of the tools you get very early on is your dad's phone, and you can use it to call a myriad of phone numbers. In fact, the first number you get is your mom in order to call her and see if everything's okay. At the very end of the game, I'm talking within 30 seconds of beating the game, if you call your mom again in the arcade, you actually pause. Like I said, no spoilers yet, but that's an example on some of the kinds of puzzles that you have to trial and error your way to solve. And that's a light example. This game is definitely worth checking out. It's only been 2 days and it's already one of my favorite FNAF games, if not #1. But I want to sleep on that to figure it out for sure. For now, let's talk plot. The game opens about halfway through the original story it's based on, actually, following Oswald, our main character, being driven to Jeff's Pizza by his father. He goes there every day to not be home alone during the summer. But this day, his dad is late in picking him up, and being annoyed about that, he tries to get back at his dad by hiding from him before he gets there. His idea is to hide in the abandoned ball pit in the back of Jeff's Pizza. He goes in, but when he comes out, he's not in Jeff's Pizza anymore. Well, the building itself is the same, but now it's decorated as a Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. In fact, everything is retro, seeing a calendar in another room. We're in 1985 all of a sudden, in a Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, the restaurant that Jeff's Pizza was before Jeff took over. At this 1985 Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, Oswald has a great time. He plays around with some kids he meets, does some arcade games, plays tag, he even plays hide and seek. But when he's playing hide and seek, he makes his way into a storage room and finds the empty suit of Fredbear. He hides inside of it and successfully wins hide and seek, but while he's back there, the yellow rabbit appears. This organic looking, breathing, dark creature who peers in on him through the eyes but doesn't see him. Then everything shifts. The restaurant is darker and everyone is screaming and trying to run out the building. Oswald instead looks for his new friends that he just made and finds the yellow rabbit, beckoning him to the party room that was previously locked. Once following, Oswald encounters the missing child incident. Again, this is like maybe 15 minutes into the game. This is the premise, and we're already seeing for the first time a non-Atari styled adaptation of the missing child incident. Oswald then runs for it, trying to escape the ball pit, and it works. He gets back to the other side, finding Jeff and his father. But after Jeff leaves, his father is attacked by that yellow rabbit from the pit and is dragged inside. Oswald drags him back out, but his father is different, his eyes glowing. Once they get to the car, Oswald realizes that yellow rabbit has replaced his father, but only he can see the difference. Everyone else thinks his dad is just fine. He realizes that his dad must be back in that ball pit, and he resolves to escape his house, get back to the ball pit, and find his father. And that's pretty much where the game kicks off. So that's the description and premise for this game. Moving forward, we're going to step into spoiler territory. This is my best pitch for you on what this game is and what it's about. I highly recommend buying and playing this game before you watch the rest of this video. Spoilers ahead. I'm going to talk about the rest of the content of this game. You have been warned. The game really kicks off from there. During the following daytime sections, you collect items and survive daily life, going to school and acting as though everything's normal. And at night, you escape the house, enter the ball pit, and look for your father. Each night, Oswald saves a different kid and explores the pizzeria just a little bit more. Eventually, on the 5th night, we make our way back into the very same party room where the missing child incident happened, and we find the 5th child we save, who lets us know that she didn't see any grown-ups, but she heard some man groaning through the vent. So we climb through it, and we find ourselves in the secret safe room that every Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is equipped with, and inside is our father tied to a chair. We untie him, but we get interrupted by the yellow rabbit, who drags our father off. We chase after them and find the rabbit and our father fighting just outside the ball pit. And this is where we start to see our different endings, and where the endings diverge. If up until this point you have just played the game and not gone after any collectibles or didn't get the collectibles you needed already, then you're met with the 1-star ending, a bad one. You and your father barely escape through the ball pit, and on the other side, while you're still recuperating, the yellow rabbit jumps out, grabs Oswald, and goes back into the pit. We then cut to Oswald tied up in a chair much like his father was, and it's implied that the yellow rabbit kills him. This is a very sad ending, but it's not the only bad ending actually. At any point after your first encounter with the yellow rabbit, you can just leave through the front doors of the pizzeria in the past. If you do so, Oswald leaves it and gets lost and confused, not sure where he is, which you then get the ending implying that you just abandon your father in the pizzeria and try to make a new life in 1985. It's very reminiscent of that main door exit ending from Security Breach. But there are better endings to be had, all of them being locked behind collectibles. Throughout the pizzeria, you can collect items from your father that are connected to memories that the both of you share, much like the Mario items in Luigi's Mansion. If you collect all 5 of them, then one more item spawns in the party room where the MCI happened, a mysterious photo with the figures scratched out. In-game, you really can't make much of it, but the achievement photo actually shows the silhouettes of what looks like William and Henry. Not only that, but in the files, someone found a scrapped concept for this photo, which was likely planned to be inspected, but they decided against it, where it's definitely William and Henry, at least according to their character encyclopedia descriptions. This photo is what unlocks the canon ending. In the final fight, as you and your father leave through the ball pit, that photo falls out of Oswald's pocket, and in the moment, the yellow rabbit instead goes after the photo, getting confused and having a little freakout section. This buys you just a bit of time, so that when you're on the other side, you recuperate before the yellow rabbit pops out, leaving Oswald to give that final punch from the book, which gets the yellow rabbit stuck in the netting, and its struggling ends up hanging itself in the ropes. The pair then reunite, reconcile, and leave. But this is just the 2-star ending, because after the credits, you get a scene where Jeff goes to investigate the ball pit and finds that yellow rabbit, who's still alive, and attacks him. To get the 3-star ending, we're not done collecting items yet. Throughout the game, there are pieces of arcade machines that can be collected to repair the present-day Jeff's Pizza broken down machines. If you repair every single arcade machine and play 3 secret mini-games on top of collecting that photo, you unlock the 3-star ending. It's the same ending, but the post-credit scene is changed to a much happier one. Jeff seems to have renovated his restaurant with the funds from those arcade machines, and we see him serving a happy family at the new restaurant. This is the best, but likely non-canon ending. So that's the major plot of the game. But what are the secrets that I keep mentioning? Like I said before, throughout the game you can find multiple pieces of technology that can be used to repair the arcade machines in present-day Jeff's Pizza. This unlocks a token-free version of that arcade machine that you can play in safety and earn tickets for. Every 20 tickets gets you a prize voucher. Those prize vouchers can be used at the machine in the middle of the arcade to get 4 prizes. The first is a handheld game console, which can be used to trade with a delinquent for a firecracker. The other 3 are stickers that you place in a sketchbook that you get from this girl named Gabrielle. The arcade machines are mostly just fun side minigames that you can play. By the way, Helpules is by far the most efficient arcade machine to grind in. You get 1 ticket per rep, and most people can get about 10 reps per game. But there is one really big secret in this Balloon Boy minigame where you collect party hats. Once you collect 5, there's a secret wall that you can walk through. You go through a dilapidated party room, then pop 5 balloons, and then you find this sprite of Purple Guy dangling a 6th party hat over a pit. You can catch it and then head back to win 6 out of 5 hats. This game has some implications. It could be argued that this is saying the missing child incident had a 6th victim we didn't know about thus far, but that's speculation. If all of these arcade machines are fully repaired, then you get a chance to get the 3-star ending, but to do so, you need to beat 3 secret minigames. So what are they, and how do we get them? All of these minigames are available and accessible during Night 5. One of them is specifically only accessible right before the end of the game, but I believe the other 2 can be accessed during Night 5 at any moment. The first is accessed by calling Mom during Night 5. It's that secret I mentioned in the intro. If you do so, you get this minigame, where you play as Eleanor from Fazbear Frights, granting a girl a wish. You build her a more and more beautiful body until eventually giving her a necklace. She then turns into a pile of trash and the minigame ends. This is the minigame based off the Fazbear Frights story, To Be Beautiful. The story is essentially this minigame. This girl met Eleanor and repaired her, and Eleanor promised to grant her one wish. Her wish was to be beautiful, so every night she woke up more and more beautiful, so long as she wore the necklace that Eleanor gave her, a silver heart pendant. By the end of the story, she looks completely different, but she falls and her necklace comes off. She can't quite get it back on, and while she's struggling, her body is turning into garbage. She runs home and finds Eleanor, by this point almost being entirely garbage. She finds in the garage several bags of her own chopped up body parts. Eleanor takes the necklace from her and puts it on, appearing like the girl did at the beginning of the story, and leaves. It's implied Eleanor was slowly replacing this girl's body with garbage, but using the necklace to make her appear more beautiful instead. The second minigame is, in my opinion, the longest to get. In the dining room, specifically just before the end of the game. Like I mentioned, your father gets dragged out of the safe room and then you go to the ball pit for the final confrontation. It's in between those 2 moments where this minigame is accessible. You go to the candy machine and you have to spam it. And I'm talking like 50 plus times you have to activate this candy machine. Hey, Mega Cat Studios, if you're watching this video, amazing game. Love this game. Might be my favorite FNAF game of all time. I get this secret. He mentions he could just sit here forever and eat it. It could have been like 20. You didn't need to make it like 50. Hell, he says 25 cents. He could have made it 25. Wouldn't have taken this long at least. But eventually, and you do get some secret messages as you spam, you get this minigame, which looks a lot like Foxy Go Go Go, which I believe is on purpose. You play as this girl going into a room collecting 5 objects, and the objects change each time, until eventually it's just Bon Bon on Funtime Freddy's hand. Collecting that, the girl starts crying, and the minigame ends. This is the minigame based off of the Fazbear Frights story, Count the Ways. This story is essentially a really sad goth girl named Millie is obsessed with death, and she winds up hiding in Funtime Freddy's chest, to which she gets trapped. Funtime Freddy then starts listing all the ways that he could possibly kill her in incredibly graphic detail. She eventually chooses the guillotine, hoping to avoid it at the last minute and break out. The story ends ambiguously, but in the later epilogues we meet Millie's spirit, assuming that she failed to escape. The third secret minigame is the only one with prerequisites. If you've beaten enough arcade machines to get the handheld console and all 3 stickers, when in Night 5, you have to interact with the prize voucher machine. Some people argue you need an extra voucher token, but I don't think you do. You can find out yourself. I don't remember having one when I accessed it. But when you do, you find the minigame Find the Balloons, in which we're in a essentially Find Them styled minigame, but for Jeff's Pizza, along with Golden Freddy and the same room layout. You collect 6 red balloons throughout the area, and once you do, the party room is unlocked. Inside is a robot dog on top of a prize counter. You give the 6 balloons and you win. But when you leave, the text is replaced with "See you," and the robot dog mauls us to death. The game even zooms in on your face. This is the game based on the Fazbear Frights story, Fetch. In it, a boy named Greg is exploring an abandoned pizzeria and finds Fetch, this old Fazbear toy shaped like a dog. It's meant to sync up with your phone and get anything you want for you. It fetches. But throughout the story, it's incredibly violent and starts doing things without Greg wanting to. For example, he doesn't like this one kid, and then the kid gets attacked. He wants this girl to like him, and the girl gets killed, and her body is brought to his room. Upon the end of the story, he finds this body, screams, and he receives one final text from Fetch, "See you," the same letters, essentially being "see you later." beating all these games and collecting the old photo and repairing all of the arcade games unlocks that 3-star ending. But that's not where this game's secrets end. Far from it. There are a lot of Easter eggs in this game, and I'll try to add as many as the community found here. First off, opening the attic door can cause this Freddy mask to fall out. Upon inspection, you can actually trade it with the delinquent for the firecracker instead of the game console, so it's just another option there, which is cool. There's actually a lot of other options you can do to accomplish the same goal. For example, there's, I believe, 4 ways to escape the house, but you only ever really need to do it 3 times. So one of them isn't going to be used on each playthrough. Some people say that this Freddy mask is hinting that Oswald's father might be the Freddy bully. Others say it's a reference to You're the Band, where a kid gets hypnotized by a Freddy mask. It's honestly hard to say, but it's a cool inclusion nonetheless. In the past arcade, the first time you visit while it's still happy, if you interact with the arcade machines, you can find that all of the high scores are topped by someone named GGY. This is a reference to the Tales in the Pizzaplex story of the same title, which is wild to think about, because either this is just an Easter egg, or somehow GGY, which is Gregory under the control of Glitchtrap, was at the 1985 pizzeria, or also traveled in the pit. Either way, it's crazy. This Kids at Play sign outside of the school, believe it or not, is another reference. In fact, to another short story titled Kids at Play. This short story is crazy. Essentially, a dude runs over a kid, runs over a Kids at Play sign, and then his paranoia starts driving him crazy, because if the police find the kid and he's still alive, he's going to jail. Eventually, his paranoia and guilt catch up to him, and his body, Telltale Heart style, compels him to walk to the area of the accident in the middle of the night, and his body graphically morphs into a Kids at Play sign. Like, his eyes fall out, his skin peels off, it's crazy. And it's noted that these Kids at Play signs have these weird gross brown puddles underneath them. The reveal being, it's the body parts that were peeled off to form into the sign. Lo and behold, you see that puddle underneath this Kids at Play sign? Rarely in Oswald's room, this poster can instead be the cover for the Twisted Ones. And even more rarely, and this is actually debated on how you trigger it, some people say you wait in Oswald's room for 10 minutes, but I tried that and it didn't work, so it's not really clear how this happens, but a very important character can appear outside Oswald's bedroom's window, the Stitch Wraith, one of the main characters of the epilogues of Fazbear Frights. And thank God we finally have a good in-game visual of both the Stitch Wraith and Eleanor. Now I can stop using these cropped graphic novel pictures. Or for the Stitch Wraith, this one picture we have from the character encyclopedia. We also get a one-line reference to a Fazbear Frights story, What We Found. In this book title, nothing divided in half is nothing. It's a line from the story. There's also a series of Easter eggs you can find on your phone. You can call the several phone book numbers to just have fun conversations. You can, without prompting, call 911, and you'll find out that 911 services were disbanded in this town for budget reasons, and instead to call your local police station. You can call this poster number, which gives you a line to Freddy's, which you then hear a special they have, the Golden Bite, with an 83 slice pizza. This is a crazy reference, and they threw in exotic butters too. The coolest one in my opinion is if you dial 777-4648. Now this number was found by digging through the game files. No one's really sure how we're supposed to figure this out in-game. The best guess anyone has is that this technically spells out Spring T in phone dial text. Essentially how like some phone numbers would be like 1-800-CALL-NOW. The same thing applies with this, but Spring T. If you call it, you get this audio. Intense. Seemingly, this is the audio of William Afton getting spring-locked, and it's badass. Like, look at it overlaid. Finally, we get this big Easter egg room. It's the safe room, the Freddy safe room. In order, the photo of Henry and William from the Silver Eyes, Endo 02, possibly a reference to Charlie's science project and the Twisted Ones, the movie Balloon Boy figure, It's Me, Garrett's plane from the movie, And this thing, it's probably a reference to something, I can't clock it. Now, there are plenty of more Easter eggs in this game. Honestly, probably most of them have still yet to be found. This game is only 3 days old, and every hour somebody finds something new, which is really cool. It feels like that old FNAF 1 through 4 feeling again, where we just keep finding shit. I can't wait what else will be found. But I hear you. This is all really cool. The plot is awesome. The Easter eggs are sick. How does this game affect the timeline? Does it affect the timeline? Is it in the game's continuity? Well, it's complicated. So there's a lot of ways this debate can go. On one hand, the name of the game is Five Nights at Freddy's Into the Pit, and nowhere is it stated to not be in continuity or to be a spin-off. So on one hand, yeah, of course it is. It's an official game. But then in the interview with Dawko, Scott mentioned this game was born out of the idea that MegaCat Studios can make physical cartridge games, and it was meant to just be like a fun spin-off cartridge thing, but it grew bigger and better over time and became a full official game. So was it intended to not be part of the continuity but now is? Or is it still not? Is it just meant to be its own fun thing? Even if the game is in continuity, what parts of it are? This game is full of Easter eggs. There's 3 mini-games that directly tell the story of Fazbear Frights stories, but then again, there's Easter eggs from Fazbear Frights, Tales from the Pizzaplex, The Silver Eyes, which is definitely not in continuity, other games, and the movie, which everyone agrees is not in the game's continuity. So what about those references? And if those references aren't, what about other references? What inclusions are Easter eggs? And what inclusions are lore-intentioned references? It's really hard to say. I've even heard people make a very strong argument that this game is an in-universe game. After all, the main menu is on a TV screen, the game over screens and credits are on a TV screen, and other like the settings, the pause menu, like it's very clearly in a TV screen. So is that supposed to cue us in that this is an in-universe game? But even if it is an in-universe game, that doesn't necessarily mean it's not in continuity. After all, Help Wanted implies that FNAF 1 through 6 are in-universe games, but they tell true stories, so they still happened in continuity. Truthfully, sitting here, I am not sure what to make of this game's continuity. I don't know how it affects the grander timeline yet, but one thing is for certain, there's a lot of ways it can go, and this game is one of the best FNAF games we've ever gotten. And in the Dawko interview, Scott mentioned that he wanted to work with MegaCat Studios again, possibly making a game like this for Fetch. And I'm all for it. This game was amazing. There are a lot of theories to be made about this game, but they all deserve their own videos. I think for the purposes of this video, it's best I end here. So what do you think of the game? How does it compare to other FNAF games in your opinion? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below.
Secret of the Mimic is here, and frankly, it's one of the best FNAF games we've ever gotten. It might be my favorite FNAF game they've made so far. It's really that good. The gameplay, the horror, the writing, everything about it I enjoyed. But as much deserved praise as the game is getting, a lot of people are walking away from the story a bit confused, which I guess is the mark of a good FNAF game, especially after any other ending besides the first. So what did that game mean? What did its endings mean, and how does it connect to the grander story? Well, Slices, put on your aprons and let's find out the secret of the Mimic. Don't worry, that'll be the only time I make that pun. As far as the basic story of the game, we are Arnold, a sleep-deprived, wet, sopping towel of a man whom I love. We also work for Fazbear Entertainment, and dispatch tells us that we have one last shift for the day. Edwin Murray is a contractor for Fazbear, but he's disappeared. And per his contract, now everything he's been working on is forfeit to Fazbear, so we just have to go and collect whatever he was working on. We're warned that several motion sensors in the building indicate something's moving around, but we're then told it's probably nothing. So we enter Murray's Costume Manor and quickly find Dispatch through an intercom system in the building itself. Once we're inside and the power's on, Dispatch levels with us. He tells us that the thing moving around is likely an endoskeleton. One of the last things Murray was working on was an endoskeleton that could fit into any costume and replicate the persona of any character. It would have been really useful to have if it didn't have, quote, homicidal glitches. But if we're able to find the original schematics for the endoskeleton, we can not only fix it, but then Fazbear can use it in all of their animatronics. So Arnold does just that. That's our main goal in the game, to retrieve the original schematics of the Mimic endoskeleton and fix the Mimic so Fazbear can use it in all of their animatronics. As we go through the facility, we have to hide from the Mimic and defend ourselves from the various costumes that it takes. First Jackie in the Box, then Big Top, who I thought was Big Top Music Man, but I think he's only ever referred to as Big Top, but obviously you see the connection here. Dolly the nurse and Chica. Yeah, literally Chica the chicken. This story takes place while Chica the chicken still belonged to Chica's Party World, and was soon to be, or just recently was acquired by Fazbear. Eventually though, you get the executive status on your data diver, which allows you full reign of the facility and the mimic schematics, the reason we came here. After a weirdly ghost supernatural encounter with this white tiger costume, we make it back to the main office and we talk one more time to Dispatch, who says job well done and tells us to return the data diver to Dispatch through the inventory system in the building. This is where we start to get the different endings of the game. If you give the data diver through the inventory system to Dispatch and leave, you're able to get into your van and go. But once you get into your van, Dispatch calls you over the radio and tells you they've been trying to get in contact with Arnold all night, and that they have to fire him because he hasn't been answering his calls. Arnold explains that he's been talking to Dispatch the entire night and just gave Dispatch the data diver, to which the Dispatch in the van says that we admitted giving away company property and that we're going to be sued for losses. But if all that wasn't enough, in the back of the van, Arnold notices a light, and adjusting the mirror, the mimic tagged along for a ride. It reaches towards us and knocks us out, and we come to inside of the suit of what appears to be a prototype Freddy Fazbear in what appears to be a prototype Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, right next to a prototype version of Chica and Bonnie performing on stage for the Mimic. Frankly, it's an ending that rightly has been called out as very similar to the main ending of Help Wanted, and that's not an accident, but we'll get there in due time. So that's the basic plot of the game, but already some things aren't adding up. It doesn't take a genius to realize that Dispatch was the Mimic the whole time we were in the building, but if that's the case, why was Dispatch trying to get us to work against the Mimic? Or rather, why was the Mimic hunting us down and trying to stop us if our goal was explicitly for the Mimic? Well, to understand that, and the other two endings, we need to start talking about the stories underneath the surface level of this game, starting with the story of the entire business itself, Murray's Costume Manor, and its eventual downfall. Murray's Costume Manor was originally owned by Edwin Murray's father, Edwin Sr., but working at the facility as a creative inventor, Edwin Murray found great success with his product, the Cleanovac. Frankly, it was the most successful thing he'd ever created. They made statues of this thing. It was so wildly popular. Ever since then, he'd been trying to chase that feeling and make something bigger than the Cleanovac, and failing it every time. Edwin Sr. died a little earlier than expected, and Edwin Murray, still very young, inherited the entire business. He wasn't a businessman, but he would have to try his best to keep the business alive. He kept throwing out more and more Murray co-inventions, but they were often half-baked or had serious problems that weren't found until it was too late. All these inventions ended up causing was more lawsuits and more costs to the company. The costumes the facility created were selling fairly well, and that's where pretty much any of their money came in, because the inventions just kept costing the company more and more. But luckily, while the company was in a bit of a downward spiral, longtime business partners Fazbear Entertainment approached with a contract that was a bit too big to refuse for how the company was running. If Edwin could get this Fazbear contract done, they'd have enough money for everything to go back to normal. The commission is never specified, but judging from what's been created in-game, it seems to be an entire prototype replica of a pizzeria, befitted with prototype animatronics, a bear, chicken, and bunny to perform on stage, and 2 Springlock suits, Fredbear and Spring Bonnie. Very important note here, these are all prototypes, to the point where the main band looks like they're made out of scrap metal, and the Springlock suits literally have prototype on the back, so I don't think these are the finished versions that end up being used by Fazbear. I want to be clear here on that. Fazbear kept approving the project as it went on, approving all of the art and all of the directions that the things were taking shape in, but as they started getting to the end, Fazbear kept sending more and more change requests, costing more time and money and making Edwin have to throw out months of work at a time. At this point, Edwin was at the end of his rope, the end of his money, and about to lose the only contract that could save this company. But he didn't know until it was too late that this was all part of the plan. On the other side of this contract, whether through jealousy or wanting to dominate the market, William and Henry had planned to ruin Murray Co. with this contract from the start. They wanted to absorb Murray's Costume Manor, all of its assets, and as many employees as it could. So they made a contract with Edwin Murray, one so big that it would nearly capsize Murray's Costume Manor if it failed, but so lucrative that Edwin, who's very trusting and very desperate, couldn't refuse. especially since it seems as though Edwin and Henry were close long-term friends. They were on a nickname basis, and some lines have Edwin saying, "like we always do." As the company weaned on this secret project, William Afton started secretly contacting several Murray Costume Manor employees and offering them better positions with better pay, even offering bonuses if they can bring over other Murray's Costume Manor employees with them. To top it off, they made the contract more difficult as it went on, changing requirements, telling them to change everything by the end of it, and just making it generally impossible to work with.
Aren't they insane? The look of these new animatronics is Fiona's design, and they're great. Oh, first they approve the art, then they approve the proofs. Now they change their minds when we're so close to final. Why would they change them now? Are they pulling my leg? The new concepts are frankly creepy. It doesn't matter. I'm not changing a single bit of her work, and they can't make me.
And after everything began to fail and the company begins to default and employees are leaving left and right, William Afton and Henry Emily offer Edwin one final solution, and we get the second half of that letter. Software development and the entire MCM catalog. We would love to keep you on as a lead engineer. Although we now technically own the land, we would never touch the house your parents built. We feel this offer has been more than fair, considering how far behind you are. It's just too much for you to handle alone. We are waiting for your response. WA. At its lowest point, Fazbear buys all of MCM, all of its property, and all of its remaining software. They even offer Edwin a job as lead engineer, but I get the feeling he was never able to take it. In fact, this audio log tells me that this is around the time he shuts himself off in the manor to work on the mimic some more.
Edwin, never forget.
What?
They're behind it.
What?
Don't trust them. Never tell them. They want to destroy you. Dad was right.
Also, if this video is helpful to you and you like FNAF, I make a weekly FNAF themed podcast and a weekly FNAF or other horror game theory every Friday, so subscribe and stay a while. And if you like gaming, I stream on twitch.tv/RyToastYT 4 days a week, every single week, and I edit down and upload those streams and clips to RyToost, my second channel. And if you like audiobooks or compilations, I upload that to my third channel, RyDoze, and I just started a D&D campaign with these amazing creators as well on that channel. So if you like any of that, go find it. The links are in the description and on screen. Look, I hope this video does well, and if it does, I'm gonna self-indulge a little bit. This business side story is what we begin to see in the two other endings of the game. If instead of giving the data driver to Dispatch, you instead run the parachute.exe program with your newly found executive permissions, a secret hatch opens up in the office. Immediately, Dispatch drops the act and starts threatening you, saying that it's too late, you won't make it out alive, and that it is going to catch you and stuff you into a suit. You go through this secret tunnel to end up at the Welcome Show lobby, to which you can now play the Goodbye Show, which allows you into a lower part of the facility, the same part where that secret prototype Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was being created. Once we get there and turn on the power, the Mimic arrives too, putting on an amalgamation of Fazbear parts and looking really cool while doing it. We have to use the prototype springlock suits that were created here to get into the security office, as Dispatch, or whatever Dispatch really is inside the security office of the prototype Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and is keeping us out using the security cameras and locking doors on us. It's essentially playing FNAF 1 in reverse, which is an incredibly cool concept. Eventually, when we drain enough power, Dispatch relents as there's nothing more they can do and lets us inside the security office, to which we see this. So if we've been being chased by the Mimic the whole time, what is this? Well, to explain that, we'll need to delve into the personal lives of Edwin, Fiona, and David Murray. Oh my god, Jesus, Mark. Now, I think I should put a bit of a disclaimer at the rest of this video. So far, I've only barely speculated on the lore of this game. A lot of what I've said is pretty much in the text or just barely implied. Like, it's very clear this is kind of how the business stuff went, this is what the Fazbear contract was, yada yada. However, uncovering the true story of Edwin's family life is a lot trickier. There's a lot of weird details that don't perfectly line up that we're going to have to speculate on. So take what I'm about to say about their family with a grain of salt. It could be wrong, but as far as I'm aware, this is my best guess for how Edwin's family life was. And also, in this video, I don't have too much time to go into every piece of evidence as to why I believe this. So I'll show relevant evidence in the background as I mention things, and I'll point out some evidence as I go, but as far as deep dives into the evidence itself, like moon.exe, you'll have to wait for future videos for that, because trust me, We're gonna be talking about this game for years to come. Edwin met Fiona while working at MCM, and eventually they got married and had a son named David. However, as the business started to go sour, Edwin began burying himself deeper and deeper into his work, ignoring and neglecting both Fiona and David, and eventually tragedy strikes. Fiona went to go help the Fall Fest crew set up for their first annual show, but unfortunately, at that Fall Fest was a fire, and Fiona died inside. This is a deviation from the lore we know from the books, but I think this is the most likely answer here, as a statue in Moon.exe depicts her as burnt with the snow globe of the first ever Fall Fest, and we know from the audio logs that she went to Fall Fest, and after she dies, Edwin's first audio log is, "Why did you go? You weren't even supposed to be there." In her wake, Edwin is at a loss. He doesn't understand how to keep working at his job, keep taking care of his son, and keep everything together, until eventually, one day, he swears he hears Fiona in the basement of the facility.
Recording? Test. Levels are good. This is where I heard it. It's her or someone that sounds like her. Set frequency to 4625. Hello? Hello?
Oh my god.
Is anyone there? Over. Say something. It's me, Edwin. Over.
It's a voice that's been recorded on devices before, but he swears that it's her spirit manipulating this. So near that basement, he begins working on the Mimic. Building it off of the technology he's already had in several other inventions, his goal is not necessarily to replace Fiona, but to make something that can help him watch David the only way that he knows how. And eventually he does make M1, an endoskeleton that can fit into any costume, change its shape into any size, but most importantly, recreate any personality. And somehow it works, and it adopts the persona of Fiona quite quickly. But M1 tells Edwin to keep Fiona's identity a secret, as the others might not understand. So Edwin presents M1 to David as his new babysitter and companion, something that can put on costumes and play with him and take care of him while Edwin gets some work done. This does sort of work for a time. M1 is Fiona when Edwin's around and just the Mimic when everyone else is, and M1 can take care of David while Edwin works. But eventually, tragedy strikes again. On his birthday, David ends up dying at the playground that Edwin built for him, and he takes this loss especially hard. But M1 convinces him there's another way. M1 reassures him that even though this loss was an accident and unavoidable, he can fix it. He's done it before. Look at Fiona. So Edwin tries his best to make M2, a robot that could theoretically replace David, just as M1 replaced Fiona. But for some reason, it just won't work. M1 worked, and he's still not sure why. I think it's likely that M1 is possessed by Fiona herself, and that's the spark that Edwin can't seem to recreate. Eventually, growing desperate, M1 is willing to give up her body so that M2, David, could take it, and M1 can wait for Edwin to make another body in the meantime. So Fiona is moved into the MXES, Mechanical X-Form Experimental Storage Container. It's then renamed to F10N4, or Leet Speech for Fiona, and she waits there, while Edwin is supposed to make David out of the remaining body. And it begins to work, but it begins to work too well. Edwin starts to realize that this has all gone on much too far. None of this is his real family. None of this will bring them back. And once that robot started mimicking David, copying his mannerisms and acting like him, it was too far and it was too painful. In a fit of rage, yelling at this robot that it's not David and it can't replace him, he beats the Mimic and destroys its legs. Soon after, in the manor, an experiment in Edwin's office goes wrong, and an explosion traps him in the rubble. It's unclear if M2 made it this way, but it's clear that at this point, M2 wasn't destroyed, just beaten, as we get this very chilling audio log in the aftermath of the explosion.
Test. Journal entry. Too bad the new power test was a failure.
M2!
Due to a minor detonation.
M2 is the one speaking?
There's damage to my office interior, as well as a small fire. Note to self, portable cleaner that gets rid of smoke damage. Or better yet, a Cleanovac attachment. Help! M2, respond. Emergency. Call for help. Daddy's busy, buddy. Why don't you go outside and play? Please. I can't move. I can't feel my legs. You know, speaking of legs, what do you think? I just finished mine. There are still a few kinks to work out. I'm sorry, M2. I lost my temper. I was always gonna fix you. Please, call for help. M2, respond. Oh, can't right now, buddy. We can do something fun tomorrow. I promise. Ask your mom if she's not busy.
This is insane.
Help.
And there we have Fiona, M1, inside of the MXES system, and this amalgamation of David and Edwin and the agony involved inside of M2. Again, there is more to this story, especially in Fiona's motivations and possible culprits behind David's death, but those are better served for later videos that focus on those topics. For now, with that context of the family in mind, let's go back to the other two endings of this game. When you meet Fiona in the security office, she tells you that you can still be useful. After all, we've collected the schematics for the Mimic. She's convinced if we can give these schematics to Edwin, he can repair M2 so M2 can go back to being David again. It'll fix this violent glitch in him and he can be their sweet little boy, and Fiona can have a child once more. So you take Edwin's tunnel to the manor itself, and M2 is already pacing the halls looking for you. And here is where you have two endings. The second ending has you make it into Edwin's office after figuring out the code, and that's where you find that it's exploded and you hear that audio log. But you activate cradle.exe, and then attempt to escape. The Mimic and several of the failed Mimic 2 copies are chasing you the whole time as the facility burns down around you. You do make it to your van, but so do they, and in the car chase trying to escape, eventually the Mimic itself breaks through your windshield and causes a crash. In the wreckage, Arnold seems to maybe die, it's unclear, but the Mimic doesn't go for the kill. Instead, it just takes your data diver, attaches it to itself, and walks off into the night. But if you've collected every collectible and beaten moon.exe, which will definitely get its own video, you'll receive the glitched permission to your data diver, which allows you to access all the other doors in the manor. Inside of all of them are cassette tapes with bedtime stories on them. Once all of them are collected, you get event access to this boarded up door, which houses David's room. Once inside, the Mimic exits the closet and begins getting confused on what it's meant to do here. So if you use the storybook recordings of David's parents, M2 will fight back and forth between trying to kill you and trying to be David, until eventually you confuse it enough that you've stunned it and inject the data diver into its programming, uploading the original schematic and repairing M2. Once you've done this, it easily reverts back to David and acts just like him, going to bed and telling his parents that he loves them. So at the end of all of this, which of these endings is canon? How does the Mimic end up at security breach after all of this? Does Arnold survive? Well, these are all questions for other days, but I think the most important question that I can capstone this video with is solving what is the secret of the Mimic. After all, the title of the game implies that there is one singular secret that we are supposed to walk away from and know. And we learned a lot about the Mimic in this game. He's got like at least 8 secrets. I think with all of the information we get in this game, the main secret we are supposed to walk away from, and the thing that explains a lot of previous games made by Steelwool and Scott Cawthon, is that the secret of the Mimic is that there are 2. One of them, M1, was originally Fiona, but is a more digital version of the Mimic, something that's able to replicate personalities. And the other one, M2, is an endoskeleton with violent tendencies that's just trying to lash out against its environment and the world around it that never cared for it. It definitively explains why in the games, Glitchtrap and the Mimic seem like 2 different entities. They are. They're 2 separate iterations of the same idea. But then, how does Fiona turn into Glitchtrap? We are so back. Mysteries are back on the menus, boys. And that's pretty much all I think is relevant to cover today. But let me know what you thought of the game in the comments below, and if you still need to catch up on gameplay, I took all 3 of my streams, edited down the downtime, and made it one long 13-hour video playthrough of all of my playthroughs and all 3 endings on the second channel, which you can find right here. If you want your fan art featured on the channel, make sure to share it with #ToastArt.
Huge thank you to the best channel members, the Dough Risers. And until next time, as always, stay toasty slices.